A young man is seen standing in front of a window. Blood is splattered all over him, on the curtains and on the floor at his feet. On the floor, the lifeless body of a man lies amidst a chaotic mess. Beyond the body, a little girl stands at the door, clutching a teddy bear, her eyes fixed on him. That was 7 years ago. He killed that man. In the present, the young man is released from prison and thanks the warden for taking care of him during his confinement. However, the warden of Toyama Prison warns him never to come back, stressing that he must heed his warning. The man stands in the middle of a vast, snow-covered field, with towering mountains reaching for the horizon. The sunlight shines down on him. He tells himself that with this freedom, he can finally die. He is startled when someone calls his name. "Kazuma," a voice calls out nearby. Walking toward him from beside a small car is a short woman. She raises her hand high, waving at him. Then she gives a warm smile and says, "Welcome home." But Kazuma doesn't look happy to see her. His face is grim, his warm breath turning into a faint mist in the cold air. A moment later in the car, as the woman drives, she remarks that he's truly back. Kazuma doesn't reply, so she changes the subject, saying that it seems to be the coldest day of the winter and the snow is quite heavy, then tells Kazuma to be careful when he walks. But before she can say anything more, Kazuma calls her mom and bows his head, saying he's truly sorry. The woman who appears to be Kazuma's mother is silent for a moment, before her eyes well up with tears. Kazuma continues with a sorrowful expression, telling her he's sorry about Yuri. His mother replies that she doesn't think it was his fault. After a moment of silence, she says they're going to Yuri's grave. Kazuma remains gloomy and silent as his mother says she has to tell Yuri the news. The cemetery is nearly deserted as Kazuma and his mother walk past the graves. They stop before a tall gravestone and bow their heads in respect. His mother gently clasps her hands together and, speaking to Yuri, says it's been a while. A few birds circle in the sky near an electrical tower next to the Waku family grave. Kazuma's mother continues, saying that Yuri's big brother is back, and that the three of them are finally reunited, a family once again. Kazuma stands beside his mother as the smoke from a burning incense stick rises and disappears into the air. He is quiet for a moment, then calls out Yuri's name, his tone as if he were speaking directly to her. Memories from his past flood back, and he hears Yuri's voice calling him Big Brother. He remembers the days when Yuri was a high school student attending cram school. Yuri cheerfully apologizes for making him late as they step outside. She says tiredly that the class was so intense. Kazuma replies that it's always this long whenever she goes. Yuri shares her thoughts, saying that even though she wanted to go home quickly, the weird teacher named Matsumoto kept talking to her. Kazuma chuckles and Yuri continues, saying Matsumoto always looks at her in an uncomfortable way. She wishes he were a handsome guy instead. Kazuma tells her to just ignore that creep, saying that her big brother is here waiting. He reassures her that if Matsumoto ever touches Yuri, he'll kill him, then lets out a loud aura, causing Yuri to burst out laughing. She cheerfully says that her big brother is so cool. Ever since she was little, Yuri was a girl who laughed a lot and cried a lot too. But no matter how much she cried, whenever Kazuma held out his hand, she would grab it and hold on tight with a smile. She was Kazuma's irreplaceable little sister. He thought they would be together forever. But one fateful day, he was forced to witness the sight of her lifeless body, hanging from a rope tied to the curtain rod. She had taken her own life in her room, the curtains drawn, leaving the space in complete darkness. Kazuma is jolted back from his memories when his mother asks if he's okay. Getting no answer, she suggests they should head home. She apologizes for rushing him and mentions that she has to go to work for a little while in the evening. She says they'll come back to visit her again soon. As she starts to leave, Kazuma remains standing there silent, his expression tense. His mother notices his silence and speaks up, saying that no matter what the world says, she doesn't believe it was Kazuma's fault. However, his mother says that killing a person, for any reason, is wrong. She says they have to atone for their sins, the sins that caused her daughter so much suffering. Speaking of this, she shares that she is now working at an orphanage called Izumino. She admits she had wanted to tell Kazuma about her work properly. Meanwhile, Kazuma thinks about the little girl he saw at the home of the man he killed, and the suffering he brought upon her. Suddenly, his mother exclaims that she left the incense sticks at the grave. Seeing this, Kazuma offers to go get them. His mother thanks him and tells him she'll wait in the car. As he walks, Kazuma tells himself that he's caused his mother so much trouble, yet she still acts so cheerful. He wonders if she really feels that way, and deep down, feels his return is probably a burden. He imagines people calling his mother the mother of a murderer, of a monster. He can see Yuri hanging from the electrical tower, asking him why he didn't come. He remembers the day Yuri came home and screamed, demanding to know why he didn't pick her up that day. Kazuma didn't understand what was happening and stammered, "What's wrong? What happened?" But Yuri mumbled an apology, saying it was pointless to blame him. She asked him not to tell their mother. Kazuma didn't realize until the very end that something terrible had happened to his little sister. The person responsible was her cram school teacher. As Kazuma stood outside the rapist's house, the only thing on his mind was murder. Killing was wrong, but that crime wasn't his concern right now. The moment the perpetrator opened the door, Kazuma pulled a knife from his pocket and charged in, tackling him to the ground. The terrified man asked who he was, and Kazuma said that the man was the one Yuri had mentioned. When the man realized he was Yuri's brother, he stammered that he was just playing around with her. He screamed and explained that Yuri had said she was bored with nothing to do, and that it was also Kazuma's fault for not coming to pick her up. Kazuma then stabbed him repeatedly, screaming for him to die, as he felt a surge of regret for not picking up his sister and not listening to her properly. Kazuma regained his composure as he walked to the edge of a cliff, realizing that those happy days would never return, no matter how much he wished for them. He realized he had ruined the lives of so many people, and he would atone for it all with his own death. He deserved to die just like that rapist. He had promised Yuri he would follow her. As Kazuma walked to Yuri's grave, he saw a little girl holding an umbrella paying her respects to Yuri. The little girl saw Kazuma and hurried away, and Kazuma wondered who she could be. After returning, his mother apologized once again and they quickly went to his grandmother's house, where they could live in peace. Kazuma's mother cheerfully told him to eat up since she had cooked a lot for dinner, and told him to relax when he was done eating. However, she said she would eat later and that she had a few things to discuss with him after she was done with work. Kazuma lay before Yuri's grave and wondered if the little girl from the cemetery was an acquaintance of Yuri's, as he felt like he had seen her somewhere before. Yuri's photograph seemed to speak, calling him Big Brother and telling him to hurry up and come to her. Kazuma stood up and said he was coming right away. He trembled as he thought that he had to go faster. Once again, he was pulled back to that moment, right after killing Yuri's rapist, standing in a pool of his blood. Kazuma told Yuri that he was coming to her at last. However, the little girl's voice echoed, making Kazuma realize that she was the same girl he had seen earlier that day at Yuri's grave. Kazuma didn't want to remember it, but wanting to know the truth, he decided to search for the girl on his computer. He discovered that the girl's name was Matsumoto Shika. Kazuma's mind was flooded with questions. Was this girl really from the past? Why was she at Yuri's grave? And how had she been living since then? But right after, Kazuma thought that someone who was about to die didn't need to know these things, and that he was the one who had made that little girl suffer. In the end, he decided to stop, but an anonymous comment caught his attention, mentioning the Azumino orphanage where his mother worked. Meanwhile, two people entered the house. The person apologized for intruding, then suddenly opened the door behind Kazuma, while his mother said she would talk to him first and told the other person to wait a moment. Kazuma felt confused. When he turned around, he saw Shika standing in the doorway. Kazuma's mother saw Shika and called out her name. Shika, the daughter of the attacker, was now grown up and in middle school, as she was wearing a uniform. Kazuma's face tensed as he realized she was the girl he had met at Yuri's grave earlier, now standing face to face with her. Kazuma's mother rushed into the hallway, trying to stop Shika from meeting Kazuma, but seeing that they had already met, she fell silent. Kazuma's mother apologized for startling him and said she had wanted to talk to him before they met. Standing next to Shika, his mother continued that she would handle the introductions for now. His mother introduced Shika as Nishimi Shika, a girl from the orphanage where Kazuma's mother worked. Shika would be living with them on the weekends, his mother added, and she was actually supposed to be here tomorrow, but the situation had changed a bit. Kazuma was stunned, realizing that he had just read about her on the website. Shika bowed to Kazuma, and as she looked up, she said it was nice to meet him. Looking at Shika's calm face, Kazuma could only see the image of the little girl from 7 years ago. Standing in a blood-soaked room, clutching a teddy bear, not understanding what had just happened, Kazuma's mother began to introduce Kazuma as her son, and told Shika that she and her son had been living separately, as she had told Shika before. The intense look in Shika's eyes when she met Kazuma at the cemetery suddenly flashed through his mind. His mother continued, saying they would be living under the same roof from now on, and that Shika could think of Kazuma as her older brother, and let him take care of her. After a moment of silence, Kazuma's mother asked him what was wrong and if he was okay. Kazuma snapped back to the present and apologized. His mother smiled warmly and said it was late, suggesting they talk tomorrow. She then told Shika she could take a bath first, but Shika insisted on offering incense at the altar first. Kazuma felt bewildered as he watched Shika sit before the altar of his deceased sister and light an incense stick. Kazuma's mother patted Shika's head and thanked her as always, then said she would go heat up the bath for her. Shika nodded and focused on her prayer. Kazuma had no doubt that Shika was the little girl from 7 years ago, and his head was once again filled with questions. Why was she here? Why was she putting her hands together before Yuri's altar? Did she know about Yuri and the fact that he had killed her father? Kazuma realized he didn't have the answer to any of those questions, and he felt helpless thinking about Shika's identity. He could only say that she had been here before. His mother called from the next room, telling Shika the bath was ready and she could go in. Shika agreed and bowed to Kazuma before leaving the room. Kazuma stood in silence and his mother appeared, thanking him because Shika seemed a little happier today. In fact, his mother said Shika had wanted to meet Kazuma for a long time. His mother said that Shika had insisted on coming here early today, even though she rarely said selfish things. Then she apologized to Kazuma for doing that to him so suddenly. Kazuma was flustered, trying to say something, but couldn't. His mother understood his situation and gently placed a hand on his arm. She said it was okay, and that she hadn't said anything about it to Shika, that he didn't need to worry and could just act normal. Kazuma apologized to his mother. His mother said that she should have talked to him before bringing Shika home, because she thought that since Kazuma liked children and was good at taking care of others, it would be fine. But I feel it's so ridiculous, even though things aren't the same as they used to be. I'm still sorry for being such a bad mother to you, Kazuma. After all, she believed she was the one who made Kazuma carry the weight of everything. With a trembling voice, Kazuma tried to ask why his mother would say such things. But he fell silent when she said that she couldn't save either Kazuma or Yuri, and that for her, there was only regret. She had even thought about ending it all from time to time. Shika eavesdropped from behind the wall near the doorframe as his mother continued to reminisce about that time. Although she wasn't sure if she could ever make it up to the girl who was left all alone, she would live her life sincerely and help other children just like her. Kazuma kept his eyes on the ground, then told his mother that there was nothing she had to atone for, and that even though she gave birth to him, she didn't do anything wrong. He began to say that it was all his fault, but his mother cut him off mid-sentence, telling him that was enough. His mother sat down before Yuri's altar, telling Kazuma that he had suffered enough. She asked him to think about his own happiness from now on. Then she turned to him and smiled, suggesting they try again as a family and asked Kazuma if that would be okay. Kazuma clenched his fists, thinking to himself that his mother's offer was impossible, and that as long as he was alive, he would only make everyone suffer more. He was about to open his mouth to say something to his mother, but then thought that he couldn't hurt anyone anymore. Not even a little bit. Just then, Shika interrupted him, calling his mother Ms. Waku. Kazuma was startled, seeing Shika standing at the door, holding her clothes and saying there were no towels, asking if she could get one. Kazuma's mother walked over and stood next to Shika, saying it was her fault and asked if Shika had realized it before getting in the shower. Shika agreed, and his mother said she was such a good girl, while Shika giggled. His mother and Shika started walking towards Kazuma, chatting as they went, with his mother telling Shika that she could at least call her mom when she was at home, and teasing Shika by poking her cheek. Shika said she'd be embarrassed to call her that, especially at the orphanage. His mother smiled and said Shika was being shy again, but Shika denied it. Kazuma watched them, his face full of worry as they walked further away, still talking. He thought to himself that it really was Shika. Those eyes were unmistakable. He wondered if such a coincidence could even be possible. Kazuma curled up in bed, covering his face with his hands, thinking that if that girl was Matsumoto Shika, she would never get along with the family of the person who killed her father. But what if this wasn't a coincidence? Shika's sharp gaze appeared in Kazuma's imagination, along with blood splattered all around her. He thought that her goal was revenge. Suddenly, Kazuma was back at that moment when he was relentlessly stabbing Shika's father, repeatedly screaming for him to die. Kazuma saw a knife pierce through his chest, and the person holding it was Shika, gritting her teeth and crying as she stabbed him, trying to kill him. Kazuma woke up in his bed screaming. He realized it was just a dream. He sat up, laughing at himself and wondering, what am I afraid of now? I've already decided to die, so my own death doesn't matter. He thought that if Shika was the one to do it, then all the better. He sat in silence as the light in another room turned on, and a sound reached his ears. He thought it was his mother and wondered what she was doing at this hour when the clock read 1:51 a.m. He got up and went downstairs. As he peeked into the kitchen, he saw Shika standing by the counter holding a knife in her hand. Shika stared back at Kazuma as he made a sound, realizing the knife was in her hand. Seeing Kazuma standing there, Shika asked him what was wrong. After a moment of silence, Kazuma confirmed with her that she was Matsumoto Shika. Shika didn't deny it and said that her family name was Nishimi. Kazuma's voice began to tremble as he told her there was no need to hide it anymore. He remembered her. Shika asked what he was talking about, adding that they had just met today before wishing him a good night. However, Kazuma grabbed her wrist, stopping her from leaving, and told her to stop. He said to just tell him if she had a goal. His voice was still trembling as he said that she had every right to hate him, and that he would accept any punishment. Kazuma bowed his head to the floor in front of her and begged her, if she could, not to drag his mother into this. He said he didn't want to bring any more suffering to anyone. Kazuma knelt, gripping Shika's hand with the knife in it, as if trying to force her to hold it, then pointed it at his own neck. He went on saying that for that very reason she should just end him. The young Kazuma, head bowed to the ground, grabbed the knife in her hand and begged her in a trembling voice, wishing for her to kill him. Shika, with a bewildered look, mumbled something inaudible. Kazuma didn't understand what she said and wrote. Then Shika shouted that she had no idea what he was talking about, while pulling her hand away from his. She said she couldn't sleep, so she was going to have an apple, and insisted she didn't understand anything he said. It was only then that Kazuma noticed the apple and a cutting board next to the knife on the kitchen counter. Shika left, wishing him a good night. The next morning, Kazuma sat up on his mattress, wondering about what he had done. He admitted that he wasn't even sure if she had anything to do with what he'd said, and realized he had scared her. Kazuma decided he would apologize to her that day. He thought that after he did, he would leave. He pictured his mother and Shika as a happy family, while wondering if his very existence might destroy the happiness of them both. He thought that he could never go back to a normal life. He felt that he couldn't make another mistake. Just then, his mother called out to him and asked if he was awake. His mother opened the door just enough to peek in and suggested Kazuma go have lunch with her and Shika. However, Kazuma politely declined, saying he wouldn't be joining them. His mother tried to persuade him, asking why and reminding him that it had been a long time since they had gone out to eat together. She also mentioned that they hadn't eaten together yesterday. Kazuma was silent, and when his mother finished speaking, he spoke up, saying that if they ate together, people would gossip about her, and he didn't want that. His mother immediately hugged him, stressing that she didn't care about that and that she was just so happy he was back. His mother said again that she didn't care what they said and that Kazuma was her son. The only thing that mattered to her was that Kazuma was alive. Kazuma looked saddened as his mother said this. After the hug, Kazuma placed his hands on his mother's shoulders and said that he understood, and assured her that he would go. At this, his mother smiled brightly and announced that they would leave around 11:30, and asked Kazuma if that was okay. Kazuma nodded in agreement, but as soon as his mother left, Kazuma suddenly collapsed, sobbing. He curled up on the mattress, covering his face with his hands, and wept bitterly. A little while later, Kazuma was sitting at the restaurant with his mother and Shika. The space around them was crowded, bustling with people chatting and talking at every table. Mom asked Kazuma something, but since he was covering his ears, she asked again if he could hear her. Kazuma noticed and asked his mom to repeat her question. His mom did, asking Kazuma if he agreed that Shika seemed tense. A flustered Shika denied it, and his mom teased her, asking if it was because Kazuma was there, adding that it was cute. Shika giggled at being teased, still denying it, while Kazuma was thinking about apologizing for what happened yesterday. Suddenly, Kazuma noticed the stray corn kernels on Shika's nearly empty plate and asked if she didn't like corn. With a serious look, Shika nodded, saying she hated it and didn't know why it was in her food. She added that it kept falling off, making it hard to eat. Kazuma replied that she could just use a spoon, while his mom insisted she finish it because it was good for her. Shika made an excuse, trying to get out of eating the rest of the corn. Kazuma realized Shika had a habit similar to Yuri's and chuckled, then started spooning the corn from her plate, saying he'd help her eat it. But Kazuma immediately realized their current situation and felt awkward. He quickly apologized to Shika for being too familiar. Shika smiled and said it was okay, that she didn't mind. Kazuma thought to himself that their being together made it feel just like before. His mom smiled and said it reminded her of when Yuri was still with them. Kazuma smiled too, but as he was about to agree, a dark voice stopped him, calling him a murderer. Startled, Kazuma looked around searching for whoever had said it. But he saw no one, and the voice continued to curse him, calling him all sorts of names. As Kazuma was engulfed by dark thoughts, his mom and Shika brought up something they wanted to discuss with him. His mom called Kazuma's name to get his attention and said that she was actually thinking of adopting Shika into the family. Kazuma's eyes widened in realization as his mom continued, saying that, of course, it didn't have to happen right away, and that she had already talked to Shika about it. She wanted him to think it over since they would be spending more time together from now on. Kazuma thought about his family and having a new sister while Shika said her piece. But none of her words could reach him. The sound of Yuri's voice calling out to him, asking if he was willing to die for her, made Kazuma feel sick. His eyes welled up as he thought about Shika becoming the sister of someone who couldn't even protect his own. He tried to apologize and ask to be left alone, but just as he was about to speak, he threw up into his hands and fell to the ground. His mom rushed over, asking if he was okay, if he could stand, and offered to get him some water. However, she was interrupted by the voices of people nearby who were saying they had seen Kazuma somewhere before. Both Kazuma and his mom were surprised as the people joked about whether he was a celebrity, before saying it must have been their imagination, and the chatter ended as they turned away. Kazuma noticed Shika's gaze looking down at him, and he realized that things were unfolding just as he had predicted. On the way home, his mom apologized to Kazuma for forcing him to go out, saying that he still looked pale. She suggested they stop somewhere to rest, and as she looked around, she exclaimed that they had a clear view of the empty tateyama from where they stood. They decided to take a break and strolled outside for the day. His mom and Shika walked side by side, while Kazuma stood a little behind them amidst the snow-covered ground, with majestic mountains on the horizon. His mom remarked that the scenery was beautiful and reminded Kazuma that it had been a long time since they had seen it together. She lifted Shika into her arms and told her to look, but Shika commented that the view hadn't changed at all. Kazuma was once again struck by the similarity of the scene, remembering when his mom, Yuri, and he used to play together as a family. He wondered if this was a dream God was showing him before his time was up. He gazed at the scene, his eyes narrowing as he watched Shika and his mom playing happily in the snow. Later, the three of them were in the car, and his mom asked if they should head home, asking Kazuma if he was feeling any better. Kazuma replied that he was fine now. His mom cheerfully said that it was good he felt that way. However, Shika remained silent, not saying a word. Back at home, Mom made sure to ask Shika if she had forgotten any of her things. While packing her bag, Shika replied that she had everything. Mom patted Shika's head and said she'd see her next week, adding that they could go shopping. Shika immediately agreed. Mom then turned to Kazuma and asked if he was going to rest at home. Kazuma replied that he was going to visit Yuri's grave, since he couldn't do it properly the other day. His mom understood and asked if he was driving. Kazuma said he'd just walk there. His mom said okay, and told him that she and Shika would head out first. Kazuma told them to take care, and then he was left alone in the house. Now alone, Kazuma sat down to write a letter to his mother. He apologized for causing her so much trouble and informed her that he was going to end everything today. That was his final message. After he finished writing, he broke down sobbing, laying his head on the table, and apologized to his mom for being such a useless son, for causing so much trouble. But today would be the end of it all, so she should live happily with her new family. Kazuma went to Yuri's grave and placed the envelope titled Suicide Note on it. He told Yuri that he was going now, but was stopped by Shika, who grabbed his hand and asked where he was going. Kazuma was surprised and asked her about school. But Shika just asked him again where he was going. Kazuma was silent as Shika asked if he was planning to die, holding up the envelope he had just placed on Yuri's grave. Kazuma tried to say something, but Shika didn't let him explain and tore the letter inside the envelope to pieces. Kazuma tried to tell her to stop, but Shika wouldn't listen. And after she was done, he suddenly grabbed her hand and yelled, asking what she had done. He gripped Shika's small arm, lifting it and screaming at her, demanding she explain her actions as tears streamed from his eyes. Shika stammered a reply, but Kazuma couldn't understand her and asked again. At that moment, with eyes full of determination, Shika stated firmly that she would not let him die. Shika had desperately begged Kazuma not to leave, worried about the sorrow his death would bring to his mother, Ms. Waku. She noted that Kazuma's behavior had been unusual since her arrival and expressed her concern. Kazuma apologized for his attitude the day before and reassured her that he was fine now, but Shika adamantly continued to plead with him not to die. Kazuma once again insisted that it would be better for both his mother and Shika if he were to disappear. Shika, in her sorrow, begged him not to leave them, which only made Kazuma more frustrated. He claimed she couldn't understand that there were things in his past he couldn't forgive, and that he was a terrible person. Shika couldn't comprehend his self-criticism, asking why he was being so harsh on himself. Kazuma coldly replied that he deserved to die, which saddened Shika, who then hesitantly asked if they weren't family. Kazuma, with a heavy heart, replied that they couldn't be family because he was a murderer. Shika was stunned into silence by his confession. Kazuma continued to explain that he saw no future for himself and told her about the promise he had made to Yuri after killing the man who had harmed them. He had promised to end his own life. Moved by Kazuma's pain, Shika embraced him and comforted him, saying everything would be all right, calling him Big Brother. Hearing this, Kazuma suddenly remembered Yuri, whispering his sister's name as tears rolled down his cheeks. Determined to help, Shika took Kazuma to the orphanage where she lived. Although he felt uncomfortable, Kazuma reluctantly entered Shika's room. Wondering why she had brought him here, Shika didn't answer his question. Instead, she asked about his hobbies. Kazuma dodged the question, suggesting she should go to school. Shika, slightly embarrassed, admitted she didn't want to go to school and instead encouraged him to make himself comfortable, saying he could come here whenever he needed a place to hide. Shika handed Kazuma a stuffed animal, which brought a faint smile to his face. Something she noticed immediately, it was the first time she had ever seen him smile. Afterwards, Shika asked if a new little sister could take Yuri's place, leaving Kazuma confused and curious. He asked in return why Shika cared so much about him, and she explained that he was her family. Even if she couldn't replace Yuri, they could still be a family. Feeling somewhat comforted, Kazuma decided to head home, which slightly disappointed Shika, though she blushed a little and said she would see him in the evening. As Kazuma and his mother had dinner, she was delighted to hear that Kazuma had spoken with Shika. Curious, Kazuma asked his mother about Shika's circumstances. His mother explained that after a difficult experience, Shika had lived with a relative, but their relationship had grown strained, leading to her staying at the orphanage. She said that Shika's presence reminded her of Yuri, and when she first met Shika, her appearance and mannerisms made her feel as if she were seeing Yuri, so much so that she felt the urge to hug her. Since then, Shika had opened up more to Kazuma's mother, and she wondered if Yuri had sent Shika to them so they wouldn't feel lonely without her. Kazuma's mother also mentioned that it was going to snow heavily the next day, and asked Kazuma to pick Shika up from the orphanage. The next morning, as Kazuma waited for Shika, his mind was in turmoil. Unsure if he should continue living in this place, he rested his head on the steering wheel, lost in his confusion. Finally, when he saw Shika, he noticed a group of girls harassing her, which made him extremely uneasy. When one girl slapped Shika across the face, Kazuma hesitated, fearing that intervening would only make the situation worse and would bring back painful memories from the past. However, when another girl pushed Shika to the ground, Kazuma could no longer stand by and do nothing. The sight of Shika being bullied brought back traumatic memories of his sister, Yuri, and her tears in similar situations. A surge of anger rose within him, and he almost lunged at the girl who had assaulted Shika. However, just at that moment, Shika stopped him. The group of girls quickly ran away in fear, leaving only a single girl behind. Kazuma helped Shika up, asking if she was okay and apologizing for almost losing control. Shika, however, reassured him that everything was fine, thanking him with a warm smile. She then invited him to walk home with her, and as they were on their way back, Kazuma briefly imagined Yuri sitting beside him in the car. Shika, clearly moved by Kazuma's readiness to protect her, asked him to watch over her since he couldn't do it for Yuri, who was no longer with them. This request echoed something Kazuma's mother had once said, that perhaps Yuri had sent Shika into his life so they wouldn't have to be alone. Kazuma wrestled with these thoughts until he heard a voice, just like Yuri's, comforting him that everything would be okay. Overwhelmed with emotion, Kazuma felt tears welling up, and he decided he would continue to live. He promised to protect Shika, determined not to repeat the mistake he made with Yuri. This time, he swore he would protect the one he cared for. Playfully, Shika said she was thirsty and went into a nearby store to buy a drink. Kazuma sat and waited, a rare sense of peace washing over him, as if Yuri had returned. While waiting, he accidentally picked up Shika's backpack, causing a few papers to fall out. As he gathered them, he realized they were old newspaper clippings related to his case from 7 years ago. Among them, he found a handwritten note that said, "Go see him in 5 years." Captivated, Kazuma wondered if Shika had known about him before they met, and what had driven her to approach him. Despite knowing full well about his past, Kazuma still remembered that fateful night clearly, every detail still vivid in his mind. He couldn't help but wonder why Shika continued to treat him with such kindness. In the end, Kazuma decided to hide the papers again, hoping Shika wouldn't find them, all the while constantly wondering if everything he had experienced with her was just a lie. Just then, Shika returned and with a shy gesture offered him some snacks. Although his mind was still filled with questions about why she wanted to see him, Kazuma decided not to ask. As Shika left, he felt uneasy, but he refrained from investigating further, afraid it would damage his relationship with his family. Kazuma didn't sense any ill intent from Shika. When he got home, Kazuma's mother thanked him for taking Shika back to the orphanage, and he helped her carry some boxes. She mentioned an upcoming Christmas party at her workplace, the orphanage, and invited Kazuma to come and help out. She also asked if he'd had a chance to talk with Shika seriously yet. Though hesitant at first, Kazuma eventually agreed, seeing it as an opportunity to bond with Shika. His mother was delighted, knowing his presence would be a great help to them. Kazuma thought this party might reveal some clues about Shika, and his promise to protect her strengthened his resolve. He agreed to participate, making his mother very happy. The next day, on his way to the orphanage, Kazuma thought about Shika's life and felt a strong desire to understand her better. Feeling nervous, he rang the doorbell. When someone asked who he was, Kazuma introduced himself, saying he was sent by Ms. Waku. Overwhelmed by the number of children there, he soon ran into a girl, whom he then realized was the same one who had bothered Shika before. When the other children, excited by Kazuma's presence, informed Sumire about the strange boy who had come to help with the party preparations, Sumire responded coldly and ordered Kazuma to help her. He was surprised to learn that Sumire lived in the same orphanage as Shika. This discovery made Kazuma wonder about the tension between them. Soon after, Kazuma met Shika, who looked surprised to see him there. When she asked why he had come, Kazuma explained that his mother had asked him to help prepare for the party. Shika joked that maybe he was there to play Santa Claus, and Kazuma noticed her laugh. However, he wondered if that smile was truly genuine. Remembering her note about wanting to see him within 5 years, pushing his worries aside for the moment, Kazuma continued to help Shika and his mother prepare for the party. Sumire appeared, warning him not to get close to Shika, insisting that she only brings pain to others. Those words still echoed in Kazuma's mind, but he continued on with Shika and his mother to the party. Kazuma's mother and Shika greeted him cheerfully and asked him to wear the Santa suit for the party. Both Shika and his mother complimented the outfit, with Shika commenting that it suited him very well. As the party began, the children quickly gathered around Kazuma, and he decided to enjoy the festive atmosphere, while also focusing on his promise to protect Shika. Even so, a voice inside him reminded him to cherish this moment, instead of worrying about atonement or protection. Meanwhile, Shika and Sumire moved away, talking for a moment. Later, Kazuma's mother asked him if he had seen Shika, and he realized he hadn't. She asked him to go find her since it was time to hand out presents, and she gave him Shika's gift. Kazuma agreed immediately, though a lingering sense of unease settled in him as he began his search for Shika. A moment later, Kazuma noticed that Sumire had also disappeared. Determined to have a serious talk with Shika and build a real brother-sister relationship, he continued his search for her. Finally, he found Shika. But as she turned to look at him, Kazuma felt a sense of dread. Sumire's hair was a mess, and Shika was standing with her eyes cast downward. Shocked, Kazuma tried to understand what was happening, but Shika, seeing his surprised expression, quickly tried to run away. But Kazuma managed to grab her arm, holding her there in silence. As Kazuma tried to process the situation, Shika finally told him that she only brings bad luck to others. She apologized and hurried out of the orphanage, leaving Kazuma standing there, filled with worry and confusion. Shika's words echoed in Kazuma's mind, reminding him of the misery he believed he brought to others. Determined to find her, he decided to check on Sumire first. Opening the door, Kazuma found Sumire slumped against a corner wall, her body trembling from an injury. Horrified by her condition, Kazuma rushed over, intending to call for help and telling her not to move. However, Sumire pushed him away, insisting that her injury was none of his business and that he shouldn't touch her. Despite Sumire's protests, Kazuma gently placed a cloth over her wound to stop the bleeding, telling her to stay still as he applied light pressure. He called out for help, and Kazuma's mother quickly arrived, clearly worried when she saw Sumire bleeding. She spoke to Sumire in a gentle voice, while Kazuma explained that although the cut looked shallow, it wouldn't stop bleeding. Kazuma suggested they take Sumire for treatment, relieved that his mother was there. Model. She asked Sumire what had happened, but Sumire was too frightened to answer. Kazuma's mother turned to him, asking if he knew anything about it, but Kazuma hesitantly admitted that he didn't. She noticed the front door was open and Shika's shoes were gone. Then she asked Sumire if something had happened between her and Shika, suggesting that perhaps Shika had hit her. Sumire quickly stammered in reply that she had just fallen while playing at the party and hit the corner of a table. Kazuma's mother accepted this explanation, and Sumire added that she had seen an exit. Ms. Waku then asked Kazuma to find Shika, and he agreed. After confirming that Sumire could stand up on her own, Kazuma stepped outside and began his search. As he walked, he noticed footprints, suspecting they belonged to Shika. Following the trail, Shika's words echoed in his mind, making him wonder about the secrets she might be hiding and why Sumire was protecting her. Not long after, Kazuma suddenly gasped, realizing the footprints led to Yuri's grave. He wondered why Shika would come here, and his thoughts turned to Yuri. Kazuma acknowledged that he would never be forgiven, and that Yuri would never come back. However, he resolved to keep on living and to protect Shika as a way to atone for his past mistakes and the crime he had committed. He was determined to move forward even without fully understanding Shika's reasons. Just then, it began to snow, making Kazuma feel the urgency of the situation. He knew he had to act quickly before the tracks disappeared, and he immediately walked with determination towards Yuri's grave. When Kazuma arrived at the grave, he saw Shika sitting on the cold ground, shivering. He rushed to her, wrapped his coat around her, and urged her to go home. But she remained silent. Kazuma said he hoped they could become a family. But Shika rejected that idea, insisting that she only brought sadness to those around her. She started to walk away, but Kazuma called out to her, reminding her that his mother had become happier since meeting her, and that he felt alive because she was there. He emphasized that no one in his family was miserable because of her. Kazuma wondered if Sumire had influenced Shika's decision, and he asked her if Sumire had said anything, suspecting she might have been involved in Sumire's recent injury. Kazuma believed that if they talked things out openly, they could resolve these issues. He reassured Shika that he would always be there to support her, but she replied that he didn't understand, and told him everything was fine. Shika then apologized for ever saying she would become his new little sister. Kazuma was shocked, and he confronted her, reminding her of his promise to keep living and to be her big brother to protect her. Shika denied the promise, declaring it was all a lie. Kazuma was stunned, asking why she would have sought him out if it was all fake. His question left Shika momentarily taken aback. Kazuma confessed that he had read her notebook, fearing that she would hate him for prying into her life. He suspected she had another motive for approaching him, but he had never felt any malice from her. He pointed out her kindness to his mother, the words she'd said to him, and her respect for Yuri's memory, all of which made it hard for him to believe her claim that it was all a lie. Shika trembled, mumbling a denial while Kazuma pleaded with her to open up. Kazuma didn't want to continue living in ignorance, expressing his and his mother's sincere wish to cherish Shika. Shika faltered, trying to stop him, but Kazuma was insistent, viewing her as a gift from Yuri. As Shika motioned for him to stop, she suddenly slipped, and Kazuma quickly caught her, pulling her into a tight embrace. He promised he wouldn't let her hurt herself anymore. Shika, moved, listened as Kazuma swore that they would continue to live together, to become a family, and that he would protect her. With tear-filled eyes, she finally confessed her true identity as Matsumoto Shika, explaining that she had hidden who she was for fear that her past would hurt those around her. She apologized for hiding it because she was the daughter of someone Kazuma hated. Shika clenched her fists, expressing her desire to hear Kazuma say he would protect her, and her longing to share her true self. Kazuma reassured her, encouraging her to reveal more and thanking her, saying it was okay if she wanted to take things one step at a time. Shika finally broke down in tears, apologizing to Kazuma. He took her hand, comforting her, and saying that everyone cared about her, suggesting they go home together. Shika froze when she noticed someone was watching, and she began to sob, mumbling an apology to Yuri. At the same time, someone read an update about Shika being adopted into the Waku family, a smug smile on their face, their eyes flashing with malice as they declared they would visit the family to pay their respects. At the orphanage, where Kazuma was fixing a light, a staff member thanked him for his help and asked if he could also assist with cleaning. She commented on how helpful it was to have a man around for these kinds of tasks. Kazuma started his work, and a few children ran up to give him a warm hug. He thought about his decision to volunteer at the orphanage after attending their Christmas party, seeing it as a good opportunity for ex-offenders and a chance for him to spend more time with Shika. When Kazuma met Shika outside, he sensed something was wrong and asked her if something had happened with Sumire before he arrived. Shika, visibly shaken, revealed that Sumire now knew about her past. Curious, Kazuma asked if Sumire knew about the incident and everything related to Shika's history. Shika nodded, explaining that Sumire had talked about her own past struggles, about being born from a rape, and about the family that had adopted her. However, when Shika tried to press Sumire to share more, Sumire became angry and hurt. Shika admitted she regretted hurting Sumire and wanted to apologize to her. Kazuma thought the situation over carefully and pointed out that if Sumire knew about Shika's past, she might also know about the connection between him and Shika. Shika reassured him that Sumire hadn't said anything about him, but Kazuma still advised her to be cautious. He had a bad feeling about this and suspected Sumire might not know the whole story yet. While Kazuma continued working, Sumire walked in, looking surprised to see him. Kazuma explained that he'd be around more often since he was helping out at the orphanage. Noticing a small cut on her head, he checked it and was relieved when she said it was fine. Kazuma felt reassured, glad she hadn't gotten into any serious trouble. Sumire glanced at Kazuma for a moment, then shyly excused herself, saying she had to get to school. Just then, Shika appeared and apologized to Sumire for hurting her earlier. Sumire, though she seemed annoyed, replied that it was nothing, and insisted it didn't matter before hastily leaving, slamming the door behind her. Kazuma, feeling confused, turned to Shika and asked if she thought Sumire had forgiven her. Shika was quiet for a moment, then asked if he would still be there after school. Kazuma confirmed that he would, and Shika asked him to wait for her because she wanted to talk. Kazuma nodded in agreement. As the school bell rang, students poured out of their classrooms, excited about the start of winter break. They eagerly shared their holiday plans, with one talking about how good their grandma's New Year's food would be, and another joking about gaining weight over the break. They all laughed about watching comedy shows and pigging out. Sumire, feeling detached from her friends' cheerfulness, coldly asked them what they were talking about. A friend quickly apologized for being so loud, and Sumire smiled, waving goodbye and wishing everyone a happy new year before she left. Just then, someone called her name from behind. Sumire turned around, her eyes cold and sad. Meanwhile, in the common room, Shika met with Kazuma and began to share the details of her past. She recounted that her adoptive family, the Nishimis, were people she had never known. In that family, she had a brother close to her age and a mother from whom she always felt a cold gaze. She often wondered why she had been adopted and could feel the growing tension between them. Gradually, Shika discovered that the mother of the Nishimi family was her father's ex-wife, which meant her brother was actually her half-brother. Shika, with a sad expression, reflected that family is about more than just blood ties. It's about emotional connections. She explained that things didn't go well with the Nishimi family, which led to her eventually ending up in a foster facility. Kazuma listened to Shika's story with sorrow, realizing that because of his own crime, Shika had lost the family she had a right to, including her father. He understood the loneliness she must have gone through and felt her pain deeply. Seeing Kazuma's thoughtful expression, Shika asked him if he was okay. With a trembling voice and tear-filled eyes, Kazuma said that she didn't deserve to suffer through all that, and he apologized for the pain he had caused. Shika stood up immediately, insisting it wasn't Kazuma's fault, but her own. She also shared that there was still more she hadn't told him. But before she could continue, Kazuma's mother appeared and suggested they pause their conversation since it was late. She advised Kazuma to get some rest and mentioned she had a night shift, adding that she would give Shika a ride the next morning. Kazuma agreed and told Shika they could continue their talk later, noting how late it was. He gave her a reassuring smile, saying they would have plenty of chances to talk during the winter break. Afterward, Kazuma expressed his concern about becoming Shika's new family, given the turmoil he had caused in her life. Shika reassured him that she was fine with it. Before leaving, Shika thanked Kazuma and waved goodbye. Kazuma felt a sense of relief, thinking that he could bring Shika happiness as a way to atone for his mistakes, even if they weren't related by blood. Suddenly, Kazuma heard footsteps and saw a young boy slip and fall on the stairs. Kazuma rushed over to help and asked the boy if he was hurt anywhere. The boy winced in pain and said it looked like he'd hurt his wrist. Seeing this, Kazuma suggested they go to the hospital, but the boy hesitated, expressing that his injury wasn't serious enough to warrant a visit. After checking it, Kazuma determined the wrist wasn't broken, but the boy couldn't get up. The boy laughed as he admitted he couldn't stand, so Kazuma immediately lifted him onto his back and suggested taking him home to treat the injury. The boy blushed, muttering something about why she liked him, which left Kazuma feeling confused. When they got home, Kazuma gently placed a cloth on the boy's strained knee, asking if it still hurt and if he was okay. The boy admitted it was painful, but insisted he was fine. Kazuma advised the boy to rest and offered to contact his parents to come pick him up. However, the boy sadly replied that he'd wait until the pain subsided, apologizing for being a bother. Noticing his reluctance, Kazuma suggested the boy stay the night, since it was already late and especially with his injured leg. Kazuma headed for the door, saying he would prepare the guest bed, and told the boy to make himself at home, as his family was out for the night. The boy gave a small laugh and thanked him. As Kazuma drifted off to sleep, the boy silently entered his room. Standing by the bed, he gently stroked Kazuma's hair, thinking about how Kazuma wasn't like the image he had imagined. Kazuma woke with a start, surprised to see the boy so close to him, and quickly apologized for sleeping in so late. Kazuma said that his mom would be home soon and hoped she wouldn't ask too many questions. The boy chuckled, making Kazuma realize he hadn't asked for the boy's name. However, a question suddenly popped into Kazuma's mind. How did the boy know his name? Meanwhile, as Shiika and Kazuma's mother drove home, his mom excitedly talked about celebrating the new year with family. She shared her plans to visit the shrine and prepare New Year's food. Shiika was happy too, thankful to be able to spend time with the family. When they arrived home, Kazuma's mom noticed something was unusual and wondered if they had a guest. She pointed to the strange pair of shoes at the entrance, looking curious. Shiika headed to Kazuma's room, but when she opened the door, she suddenly froze, shocked to see the boy with Kazuma. She gasped and called out his name. "Shusuke!" The boy looked up, smiling in welcome. "Welcome home, Shiika." During breakfast, Kazuma felt bewildered by the situation. He had just learned that Shusuke, who introduced himself as Nishimi Shusuke, was none other than Shiika's older brother. Shusuke remarked on the coincidence that Kazuma was the one currently taking care of Shiika. Kazuma's mother, curious, pointed out that Shusuke must be from the family Shiika used to live with. Shusuke confirmed this, saying it had been 6 years since he last saw Shiika. He explained that he was on his way to a nursing home in Izumano when Kazuma helped him, and that he considered their meeting a stroke of luck. Meanwhile, Shiika was visibly shocked and unsettled. Kazuma, still reeling from the situation, asked Shusuke if he had a specific reason for seeking Shiika out. Shusuke revealed that he wanted to discuss the possibility of Shiika coming back to live with their family, a revelation that stunned everyone. Kazuma's mother, astonished, asked again if Shusuke was talking about their family. Shusuke explained that he deeply regretted the decision to let Shiika go to the care facility, and as a child, he felt powerless to stop it. Shusuke had promised himself that when he grew up, he would right that past wrong, and now he hoped to fulfill that promise. Shiika was dumbfounded by the sudden proposal, while Kazuma realized that Shiika had been their family's adopted daughter, and they would have to handle this situation with extreme care. Shusuke emphasized his commitment to bringing Shiika back to live with them, while also expressing sincere regret for the suddenness of his request, affirming that the final decision was entirely up to Shiika. Kazuma's mother noticed that Shiika was confused and frightened. She comforted her, saying that her wishes were what mattered most, and encouraged her to make her own decision about this important matter. A heavy silence fell over the room as Kazuma silently pondered the situation. He sensed that something wasn't right, and wondered if this meeting was truly a coincidence. He began to suspect that Shusuke might be hiding something, especially regarding how he knew so much about Kazuma and Shiika's adoption. Finally, Shusuke broke the silence, acknowledging the abruptness of his visit and deciding to get up to leave. However, he suddenly sat back down, wincing in pain. Kazuma asked with concern how he was doing. Shusuke admitted his leg was still hurting, but tried to stand up despite his discomfort. Noticing Shusuke's pain, Kazuma's mother insisted that he stay and rest until he felt better. She offered to make lunch for everyone. Shusuke, with tears welling in his eyes, expressed his deep gratitude. Kazuma's mother reassured him, saying Kazuma would help tend to his injury, and told Kazuma to go get a warm towel to change the dressing. Kazuma readily agreed to help and hurried out. In the meantime, Shusuke looked at Shiika, seeing she was silent and full of fear, and asked her worriedly what was on her mind. With a trembling voice, Shiika began to apologize, recalling a painful memory from the past. She remembered a time when she was being bullied and hurt by other children, and Shusuke came to her aid. He asked if the kids had done anything else to her, and in a desperate act, he hurt himself. Promising that she wouldn't be the only one in pain, Shika recalled her mother's angry voice, scolding Shusuke and blaming Shika for what had happened. Shusuke, with tears in his eyes, had insisted that it wasn't Shika's fault. Overwhelmed with guilt, Shika ran away, convinced she was the reason everyone around her suffered. This guilt made her grow distant from Shusuke's feelings. Years passed, and now, filled with regret, Shika bows her head to apologize to Shusuke, acknowledging the kindness he showed her even though they were just blood siblings. She tells him she can't go back with him. However, Shusuke smiles and gently takes her hand, reassuring her that he doesn't care about their past or their blood ties. He sighs in relief, finally hearing her true feelings, and admits he'd always thought she might hate him. He recalled the time she called him Big Brother and expressed his desire to rebuild their relationship. With a gentle smile, Shusuke squeezed Shika's hand reassuringly. When Kazuma returned with a cold towel, he happened to hear Shusuke and Shika laughing as they talked and reminisced about past family card games. Shusuke taught Shika how to play President, a game she won by a landslide. Their cheerful interactions clearly reflected their close sibling bond, and Kazuma could see the radiant happiness on Shika's face. He realized they must have shared so many memories, making this reunion incredibly special. Kazuma thought about how he would feel if Yuri suddenly appeared before him. As emotions welled up, Kazuma's eyes began to tear up, struggling with the fact that despite his close relationship with Shika, he was an enemy to Shusuke, the man who had ended his father's life. Doubts flooded Kazuma's mind about whether he could truly be a brother to Shika when she already had one by her side. While getting the first aid kit for Shusuke, Kazuma's mother called him from the kitchen. She said she was going to prepare lunch and asked if he could lend a hand. As Kazuma helped his mother, she asked what he thought of Shusuke. She noted that while the relationship between Shusuke and Shika might be difficult after so many years apart, their bond was so strong that 6 years of separation couldn't seem to fade it. Kazuma pondered the importance of blood ties, but he just felt like an outsider and a criminal in this situation. Kazuma's mother, noticing his anxiety, started to tear up. Suddenly, Shusuke entered the kitchen, asking for the restroom. Kazuma's mom showed him the way and told him to be careful. As Shusuke walked away, Kazuma felt that something was off. He noticed Shusuke glance at Yuri's memorial with cold eyes, stirring a sense of unease within him. Later, the family gathered for lunch. After the meal, Kazuma prepared to leave for the orphanage. As he was about to head out the door, Shusuke stopped him, moved closer, and whispered a request for Kazuma to leave Shika to him. Kazuma was surprised but didn't reply and simply walked out. After lunch, Kazuma's mother felt tired, and Shika suggested she get some rest. Kazuma's mom agreed and told Shusuke and Shika to relax as well. Meanwhile, Shusuke seemed lost in thought, waiting for the right moment to act. At the orphanage, Kazuma was working outside shoveling snow, but he couldn't escape his thoughts about Shusuke and whether he had some hidden motive for his actions. Suddenly, he heard a child crying and rushed over. He found a child had fallen and frantically asked if they were okay. The child only had a bruised knee, nothing serious, and the other kids went back to playing. Kazuma suddenly remembered that yesterday Shusuke had injured his right leg, but today he was limping on his left. A thought suddenly struck Kazuma. Shusuke must have fallen on purpose. Just then, Kazuma's phone rang, and a sense of dread washed over him. His mother's voice came through the phone, and before Kazuma could even ask what was wrong, she announced that Shusuke and Shika were gone. Kazuma froze, phone in hand, completely stunned. He felt a surge of anxiety, his mind filled with suspicion about what Shusuke might be planning. Kazuma's mother explained that Shusuke and Shika had been gone since she woke up, and that she was planning to go look for them. Kazuma reassured his mother, promising to call if he learned anything, and urged her to stay calm. He agreed to head home right away and wait there, just in case they returned. Just as Kazuma was about to leave, Sumire interrupted him, asking if he was on the phone and stating that she knew Shika and her brother Shusuke were missing. Kazuma was stunned and asked how she could possibly know that. Sumire expressed concern for Kazuma's mother's safety and urged him to hurry home, suggesting that Shusuke might be dangerous. Kazuma rushed home, his mind racing with questions. He wondered if Sumire was involved with Shusuke and why she knew so much about the situation. He remembered Shika's warning to be careful around Sumire, which only heightened his unease. On edge, his thoughts spiraling around Sumire's connection, Shusuke's motives, and Shika's safety, Kazuma became more determined than ever to find Shiika as soon as possible. When he got home, he wondered if his mother was back yet. As Kazuma entered the house, he immediately noticed an unfamiliar pair of shoes at the entrance. Stepping inside, he saw someone sitting in front of Yuri's photograph. When the person turned around, Kazuma realized it was Shusuke. With a smile on his face, Kazuma clenched his fists, his mind reeling with 1,000 questions. Shusuke calmly explained that Shiika had gone out to buy him a new bandage, and that he had just been sitting in the garden for a bit. Kazuma tried to remain calm, wanting to believe Shusuke's story, but he couldn't shake his deep-seated suspicion. He decided to confront Shusuke, pointing out the inconsistencies he'd noticed, like how Shusuke was limping on the wrong leg and knew his name without an introduction. Kazuma demanded that Shusuke tell him the truth, realizing that Shusuke's approach hadn't been a coincidence but a deliberate act. Shusuke feigned surprise, saying he thought he'd done a good job, but ended up getting caught anyway. He sarcastically admitted that he had limped on the wrong leg on purpose, even teasing Kazuma for noticing it and feigning regret for letting his guard down. Shusuke scoffed, admitting he thought he could easily win Shiika over and get her to come back to their family. Kazuma, completely bewildered, asked why Shusuke felt the need to deceive people. Especially since he was Shiika's biological brother, Shusuke just scoffed at Kazuma's naivety and blamed him for being unable to protect his own sister. He insulted Kazuma, calling him a murderer, which made Kazuma freeze up, unable to say another word. Shusuke pointed to Yuri's altar, taunting Kazuma for killing someone's father, only to then try and make their daughter his own sister. He accused Kazuma of trying to replace his own dead sister, calling him a terrible person. Kazuma, his anger boiling over, demanded that Shusuke stop. He admitted he hadn't been able to protect his sister and didn't expect forgiveness. With a heavy heart, Kazuma confessed that a fit of rage had led him to kill Shusuke's father. He explained that his purpose in life was to make Shiika happy, seeing it as his way of atoning for what had happened to both Yuri and Shiika. However, still filled with anger, Kazuma questioned Shusuke's true intentions. He asked if Shusuke really wanted to live with Shiika, and what his mother would think of that decision. Kazuma, his face filled with determination, challenged Shusuke on how much he was truly willing to sacrifice to keep Shiika in his life. However, Shusuke just replied dismissively, treating Kazuma's concerns as an annoyance, and declared that a blood relationship was enough for him. He brushed off all of Kazuma's worries, insisting he would take Shiika to live with him regardless of the situation with his mother, whom Shusuke considered irrelevant. Shusuke grew increasingly irritated, seeing Kazuma as nothing more than a nuisance. Suddenly, he raised his hand and placed a finger on Kazuma's lips, signaling him to be quiet, a dark, threatening look in his eyes. He then pulled a knife from his pocket, smiling sinisterly, and taunted Kazuma, saying that if he made it look like Kazuma was attacking him, given his criminal record, and screamed for help, there would be serious consequences. Shusuke showed Kazuma the knife, mockingly asking what would happen next. He then pointed the knife at himself and lightly pressed the blade against his arm, implying he was about to self-inflict a wound. Without a moment's hesitation, Kazuma lunged forward and snatched the knife, stopping Shusuke from hurting himself, though he ended up cutting his own hand, and blood began to seep from the wound. But he held the knife tightly, determined to stop Shusuke from harming himself. Kazuma's eyes filled with resolve as he confronted Shusuke, accusing him of using the knife to fake the injury on his right ankle. Kazuma pleaded with Shusuke to stop, saying that he didn't mind being humiliated, but he couldn't bear to see another child suffer. Shusuke, taken aback by Kazuma's reaction, sneered that if Kazuma wanted to play the protective older brother so badly, he would tell him something important. In a provocative tone, Shusuke said that Kazuma probably didn't know the real reason behind his sister Yuri's death. Kazuma, in disbelief, insisted that Yuri had died because of a certain man. However, Shusuke's calm reaction suggested Kazuma didn't know the whole truth. After a moment of silence, Shusuke dropped a bombshell that stunned Kazuma. Yuri's death was actually Shiika's fault. Just then, Kazuma heard a car outside, and his mother returned with Shiika. She called out a greeting and apologized, explaining she'd found Shiika buying a cooling patch for him. Kazuma's mother then asked if Shusuke was there. Kazuma, his face pale with anxiety, answered awkwardly that Shusuke had remembered something he needed to do and left. He added that Shusuke's leg seemed to be better. Still concerned, his mother expressed her worry, recalling how much pain Shusuke had seemed to be in earlier. Just then, Shika noticed the blood on Kazuma's hand, and seeing the large wound, she panicked. She immediately grabbed his hand, anxiously asking what had happened. Kazuma recalled the scene of himself, holding the knife and Shusuke's chilling words, accusing Shika of being the cause of Yuri's death. Kazuma had dropped the knife, calling Shusuke a liar, but Shusuke had only mocked him more, urging him to meet at the facility the next day if he wanted to know the truth. Despite Kazuma's attempts to stop him, Shusuke had rushed out of the house, leaving Kazuma stunned by the sudden revelation. Back in the present, Shika asked Kazuma if he was okay. Snapped out of his thoughts, Kazuma forced a smile and reassured her, explaining he'd cut his hand while cleaning up a broken vase near the altar. His mother then commented that it seemed like everyone was having accidents lately. To cheer him up, Shika handed Kazuma a snack she had just bought from the convenience store, encouraging him to eat it to get better soon. Kazuma smiled and promised he would, but inwardly he felt conflicted, weighed down by the truths that had just been revealed. Meanwhile, Sumire was sitting at her desk, anxiously staring at her phone. She heard the sound of a window unlatching and a light tap from outside. When she glanced out the window, Sumire was startled to see a smiling Shusuke standing there. She asked in surprise what he was doing here. Shusuke explained that he had told Kazuma and Shika about Yuri, sending Sumire into a panic. She furiously grabbed Shusuke's shirt, coldly reminding him of her warning not to reveal anything. Shusuke reassured her that he hadn't said a word to Kazuma's mother, before questioning why she was so protective of a stranger like Kazuma. Sumire, feeling angry and helpless, pushed Shusuke away. She coldly declared that he would never understand the pain she was going through. Shusuke, completely unfazed, announced that things were moving faster than expected and warned her that Kazuma would be arriving soon. He subtly reminded her to do what was necessary. Furious, she slammed the window in his face, leaving Shusuke standing outside with a dark, maniacal laugh. Later, Kazuma fell asleep, but he was tormented by a disturbing dream. He saw Shika standing silently alone, clutching her teddy bear and muttering chilling words. Kazuma strained to hear, but Shika's voice grew darker as she repeated over and over that she was the one who had killed Yuri. Shaken by her words, Kazuma jolted awake, sighing in relief when he realized it was only a dream. He told himself there was no way Shika could have been involved in Yuri's death. Determined to clear things up, Kazuma decided to go see Shusuke, convinced there had to be some misunderstanding. As Kazuma was getting ready, his mother came into his room, greeting him and asking if he wanted bread for breakfast. However, Kazuma said he needed to pick up some things from the facility, told her he'd skip breakfast, and asked if he could take the car. His mother, noticing how tired he looked, expressed her concern and asked if something was wrong, telling him he could talk to her if anything was bothering him. In a weary voice, Kazuma reassured her that everything was fine. As he left his room, he was surprised to see Shika sitting in front of Yuri's altar. Sweat started to bead on his forehead as he stared at her. Shika turned, greeted him, and noticed he was sweating, asking if he was feeling okay. She stepped closer and gently placed a hand on his shoulder, worried he might have a fever. Kazuma flinched, quickly stepping back, and hastily explained that he'd forgotten something at the facility and had to go get it. He urgently told her to eat breakfast before it got cold and then rushed off, leaving Shika standing there in confusion. Later, Shika found a note from Shusuke, asking her to meet him at Yuri's grave, which made her feel uneasy. Meanwhile, Kazuma headed to the hospital, his mind filled with anxiety over Shusuke's earlier words, yet still believing that Shika couldn't be involved, determined to get to the bottom of things. He entered the building, but when he saw Sumire, he was surprised when she let him inside. He asked about Shusuke, but she just brushed it off, not answering right away. Finally, she admitted that although she didn't want Kazuma to know the truth, for Shusuke's sake, she felt compelled to explain everything. Sumire revealed that if Shika didn't exist, none of these problems would have happened, and she confessed that she could never forgive Shika for that. Sumire recounted how she used to be the one Kazuma's mother loved most, until Shika appeared and took that place. Although she had accepted it, everything changed when she came to believe that Shika had become a murderer. Kazuma, desperate and wanting to understand the truth, demanded an explanation. Sumire handed him Yuri's phone, explaining that it had been found in Shika's room. Kazuma asked why Shika would have Yuri's phone, and Sumire speculated that Shika must have picked it up on the day of the incident. Kazuma tried to reason that maybe Shika had simply found the phone later, without knowing it was Yuri's. However, Sumire dismissed his logic, pointing out that Yuri and Shika knew each other. Stunned, Kazuma questioned how Sumire knew this. Sumire then played a recording from the phone, in which Yuri's voice, full of pain, could be heard screaming for help. She explained that while Shika might not have known about these recordings, Kazuma could clearly hear a child's voice apologizing to Yuri amidst the sounds of pain. He was horrified, his mind in turmoil, not knowing if Shika had intentionally hidden these recordings and failed to get help, or if she was apologizing because she felt helpless watching Yuri die. The emotional weight of his sister's cries for help caused Kazuma to collapse, weeping bitterly. Sumire continued, her tone cold, revealing that Shika had once confessed to letting someone die in order to find happiness in a new family. Sumire suggested that Shika might have wanted Yuri to disappear to escape her own misery, and questioned whether Kazuma really wanted her as a sister. Devastated and confused, Kazuma collapsed to the ground, tears streaming down his face, while Sumire watched him with a sad expression. Meanwhile, Shika, alone on the street, thought about Kazuma's sudden departure for the hospital. She felt an urge to follow him. As she walked, she noticed Shusuke watching her from a distance, a mocking smile on his face. When Shika got closer, he greeted her and revealed that he had placed the note under her bag, explaining that he had been waiting for her. A surprised Shika asked why, and Shusuke revealed that he had informed Kazuma about her connection to Yuri. Shocked, Shika asked why he would tell Kazuma. Shusuke laughed, explaining that he'd originally wanted to hide it a bit longer, just for the fun of toying with Kazuma, but Kazuma's sharpness had forced him to reveal the truth sooner. He also mentioned that even Sumire was angry with him for telling Kazuma. Confused, Shika asked about Sumire, and Shusuke explained that Sumire knew everything, and was probably discussing her secret with Kazuma at the hospital right now. Ignoring Shika's horrified expression, he said it didn't matter to him, since they were siblings after all, both carrying the blood of a filthy criminal. In a dark tone, he questioned how Shika could be happy while he wasn't, and pulling out a knife, he coldly suggested it was time to end her fake happiness once and for all. Meanwhile, Sumire, feeling her own sadness, questioned Kazuma's choice to accept a sister like Shika, who was so full of trouble and sin. Kazuma, still kneeling on the ground, consumed by painful emotions, remembered Yuri and wondered how much she must have suffered. He blamed himself for not being there for her, for not recognizing her pain. He also wondered why Shika hadn't done anything to help Yuri. Even though she was just a child, these thoughts still weighed on him like an unbearable burden. Seeing Kazuma's anguish, Sumire rushed over, asking if he was okay, but he remained silent, his eyes fixed on the ground. Just then, Kazuma received a call from his mother, who asked if Shika was with him at the hospital. Kazuma stammered that she wasn't, and his mother revealed that Shika might have gone to Yuri's grave after finding the letter from Shusuke. Kazuma instantly realized Shika could be in danger, telling his mother he would drive to find her and advising her to stay home. Sumire, seeing him about to leave, handed Kazuma Yuri's phone and told him to keep it with him. Kazuma thanked her, feeling the heavy responsibility to put an end to everything. Sitting in his car, Kazuma leaned his head against the steering wheel, filled with regret, wanting to atone for what had happened to his little sister. He remembered Yuri's comforting words and Shika's face, reminding himself of his promise to keep moving forward, but questions still swirled in his mind. Not knowing what to say to Shika when he himself couldn't fully accept the truth of the situation, Kazuma wondered if Shika felt guilty and why she wanted to see him. When Kazuma arrived at Yuri's grave, he saw Shusuke holding a knife, clearly intending to harm Shika, shattering her fragile peace. Instantly, Kazuma lunged forward to stand in front of Shika, protecting her. A surprised Shika called his name, causing Shusuke to take a step back. Kazuma confronted Shusuke, telling him to stop, to leave Shika alone, and asked why he was deliberately trying to hurt her. Shusuke replied with a sarcastic tone that Kazuma must have already heard the truth about Shika from Sumire. Kazuma admitted he had, but insisted this was a family matter and told Shusuke to leave. However, Shusuke's anger only flared up more intensely. He mocked Kazuma's family, calling it a fantasy. Shusuke's rage grew and he revealed his long-held resentment, speaking of how he used to be his mother's favorite child, until Shika came into their lives. Shusuke had hoped to share his mother's love with Shika, but instead, he was ostracized and bullied. Over time, he came to realize the harsh reality of their family, feeling useless and unloved. Shusuke remembered the price that he and his mother had to pay. His mother fell gravely ill, and he grew desperate, lacking the money for her treatment. With no other choice, Shusuke took a job at a Japanese brothel. Anxious, he met his boss, who soon after assaulted him. When he tried to steal some money, Shusuke was beaten and left sobbing. He returned home, where his mother confronted him, and in his despair he confessed everything he had been through. However, his mother reacted harshly, scolding him and calling him the family's curse, a disgrace to their name. With a knife in his hand, Shusuke confronted Shika, questioning why she was the only one who could escape their family's suffering. Kazuma tried to reason with him, acknowledging the pain Shusuke had endured, but urged him to seek happiness instead of continuing to spread misery. Cornered, Shusuke asked Kazuma if there was any reason for him to keep living after everything he had done. He begged Kazuma to end his life, hoping that his death would free Shika from the pain they had shared. Shika, trembling, apologized and pleaded with him to stop, while Kazuma tried to understand Shusuke's desperation. Shusuke, his eyes filled with tears, insisted there was no other way. He begged Kazuma to be a part of his death. Shika and Kazuma tried to comfort him, but Shusuke's despair only deepened. He questioned the purpose of trying to live, then bitterly suggested that Kazuma would never find happiness with Shika in his life. He even proposed that the three of them die together, throwing everyone into a state of horror and despair. Just then, Sumire appeared, begging everyone to stop. She approached Shusuke and managed to snatch the knife from his hand, surprising both Kazuma and Shusuke. In a panic, Shusuke lunged at Sumire, screaming for her not to interfere. They struggled, Sumire trying to hold him back, while Kazuma ran towards them, shouting for them to calm down, but it was too late. In the struggle, Sumire accidentally stabbed Shusuke in the stomach. He collapsed to the ground, his eyes closing with a faint, tearful smile. Shika and Kazuma immediately rushed to his side, calling his name in desperation, but Shusuke didn't respond, lying motionless. Kazuma, Shika, and Sumire stood frozen, horrified as they watched Shusuke lie still in the snow, a pool of blood slowly spreading beneath him. Kazuma was the first to react, screaming as he rushed toward Shusuke, frantically calling for an ambulance. Amidst the chaos, Kazuma's mother's voice cut through the tense air as she demanded to know what they were doing there. Sumire, terrified, turned to look at her, and in her panic, she accidentally dropped the blood-soaked knife to the ground. Kazuma's mother looked at the knife, then up, her eyes filled with confusion, unable to comprehend what was happening. Kazuma, equally frantic, asked his mother why she was here. Kazuma's mother looked around, her eyes filled with fear, before they landed on Shusuke, lying in his own pool of blood. She ignored Sumire, who was trembling nearby, and rushed to Shusuke's side, panicked and desperate, trying to wake him up, repeatedly calling his name and asking if he was okay. She explained she had come out of worry, never imagining things would get this bad. Sumire stood silently, her face pale, with sweat and tears glistening on her face. Kazuma's mother saw the blood on Sumire, her anxiety heightening as she asked her about it. However, Sumire couldn't answer, remaining silent as her face grew even paler. Amid the tense atmosphere, Kazuma stepped forward, realizing the gravity of the situation, and tried to reassure his mother, reminding her that he had already called for an ambulance. Suddenly, a weak voice cut them off. It was Shusuke, with what little strength he had left, murmuring that there was no need for an ambulance. He said he didn't want an ambulance or the police involved. Though everyone pleaded with him to hold on, Shusuke, with a tired gaze, gasped that he was going to die anyway. With a weary and accepting smile, he added that no one needed to feel angry or hateful, because everything, including his feelings, would just disappear. Kazuma, his heart heavy, protested, unable to bear the thought of losing another person. Kazuma's mother, tears streaming down her face, desperately pressed her hands against Shusuke's wound, trying to stop the bleeding. At the same time, the ambulance arrived, and the paramedics immediately began their work. Sumire stood nearby, trembling, trapped in a state of shock, trying to process what had just happened. When the paramedics asked for a family member to accompany Shusuke, he called out Shika's name. Anxious but determined, Shika stepped forward, but Kazuma's mother insisted that she would go with them. She told Kazuma to stay behind and look after Sumire, and promised she would handle things at the hospital. As the ambulance drove away, Kazuma and Sumire stood still, silently watching it until it was out of sight. Kazuma turned to Sumire and asked gently, "Was what happened really an accident?" Sumire, trying to explain, mumbled that she didn't know exactly what had happened. She had only wanted Kazuma's mother to be happy. Seeing her own blood-stained hands, the horror suddenly hit her, and she began to cry, panicking at the memory of what had just occurred. Kazuma, recalling his own painful experiences, took her hands, comforting her gently. He said, his voice soft, "No matter what, everything is going to be okay." At the hospital, Shika sat alone in the waiting room, overwhelmed with guilt and sorrow. Shika felt as if all the suffering around her was her own fault. She believed Shusuke's injury was entirely her responsibility and couldn't shake the feeling that everyone's misery stemmed from her actions. Her relationship with Kazuma now seemed to be over, as he knew the truth about her and Yuri. Shika felt certain that they could no longer be together. A part of her wanted to explain things to Kazuma, but she wondered if everyone would be better off if she just disappeared quietly. In a storm of regret and dark thoughts, she wished that she was the one lying in the hospital bed, not Shusuke. Suddenly, Kazuma's mother approached, breaking the silence. She announced that Shusuke was out of danger and that Kazuma would be arriving soon. Despite her relief, Shika was still anxious, her mind reeling. Kazuma's mother gently sat beside her, encouraging Shika to open up and share what had happened. Shika sat silently, the words caught in her throat, unable to answer. Kazuma's mother continued to comfort her, expressing her desire to protect Shika and end this string of painful days. She assured Shika that they were family and that she would always be by her side no matter what. But Shika couldn't hold back her guilt, crying out that she didn't deserve such kindness. Seeing the immense pain in Shika, Kazuma's mother grew even more worried. At this point, Shika could no longer stay silent. She confessed that everything with Yuri was her fault, not Kazuma's or Shusuke's. She looked at Kazuma's mother with tear-filled eyes, then burst into tears, saying that she was the daughter of Matsumoto, the man Kazuma had killed, who was also the one who had harmed Yuri. Kazuma's mother was stunned and horrified, but she decided to listen quietly, allowing Shika to say everything she had been holding inside for so long. At the same time, Kazuma was rushing to the hospital in the car with Sumire. She was still terrified and sobbing uncontrollably, expressing her regret. Kazuma tried to comfort her, saying she only wanted to help, and apologized for getting her involved. But Sumire couldn't contain her emotions, saying through her regret that she just wanted to protect Kazuma's mother from sadness, never thinking things would go this far. She said bitterly that if Shika hadn't been there, none of this would have happened. Kazuma was surprised by her words, not understanding their meaning until she admitted that she wished she were the daughter that Kazuma's mother loved most. Just then, Kazuma's phone suddenly rang. It was a text from his mother telling him that Shusuke was safe. Breathing a sigh of relief, Kazuma spoke to Sumire, suggesting they go to the hospital together and apologize to Shusuke. They hurried to the hospital and found Shika and Kazuma's mother waiting in the lobby. Kazuma and Sumire apologized for being late, but something was wrong. Kazuma's mother looked exhausted, unable to speak. Finally, she told Kazuma that he had arrived just in time, grabbing his shirt as if for support. She revealed that Shika had admitted to being Matsumoto's daughter and was blaming herself for Yuri's death. Kazuma was stunned, wondering why Shika would say this now. His mother quickly realized that Kazuma, and possibly others, had known about Shika's past, but they had kept silent, leaving her feeling hurt and betrayed. Kazuma's mother began to cry, lashing out at them for hiding the truth from her. She couldn't trust any of them anymore and told them all to leave her alone. Sumire tried to explain, but it was too late. The situation had spiraled out of control. Even Shika, overwhelmed, ran out of the room. Though Kazuma called after her, she was gone. Kazuma and Sumire stayed by Kazuma's mother's side, even though she didn't want them there. Kazuma apologized for keeping everything a secret, explaining that Shika had her reasons and that there was no malice in her actions. Kazuma's mother, still in tears, asked him how he could be so sure of Shika's intentions. Kazuma hesitated, searching for the right words before finally answering that he understood because they were family. This simple answer moved his mother deeply, helping her realize Kazuma's sincere feelings. She couldn't say another word, silently reflecting on her own past. Kazuma felt a new resolve to build a better future. He gathered his courage and sincerely apologized to his mother, admitting that he was still worried about Shika. Without another word, Kazuma quickly left the hospital. His mother watched him go, understanding that this was something he had to do alone. Alone in the room, she sat in silence, lost in thoughts of her past. Then Sumire spoke, breaking the silence. She apologized to Kazuma's mother for having kept quiet all this time. Hearing this, Kazuma's mother began to realize the pain Sumire had been carrying. She admitted that she might have overreacted and said harsh things to Shika. She wondered if Shika was okay. Sumire's emotions welled up as she tried to hold back tears. She was moved by Kazuma's mother's concern for Shika, even after knowing everything. Sumire felt that this kindness was a testament to her character, but it also made her feel a profound sense of guilt. Sumire confessed that she had always seen Shika as a rival for Kazuma's mother's affection, which led her to bully Shika while still protecting her secret. She even admitted that she had wished for Shika to disappear, a painful confession that made her break down in tears, realizing why everything had gone so wrong. She felt she wasn't worthy of being Kazuma's mother's child. Seeing Sumire's pain, Kazuma's mother felt her heart ache, not knowing how to comfort her. She gently pulled Sumire into a hug, her hand patting her back in silent reassurance. As Sumire cried in her arms, Kazuma's mother acknowledged her own shortcomings, feeling she hadn't been good enough, both as a caretaker and as a mother. She apologized to Sumire for not noticing her struggles sooner. Sumire clung to Kazuma's mother, finally feeling the warmth and love she had craved for so long. Kazuma rushed outside, desperately searching for Shika. Panic surged through him when he saw her stepping onto a bus. Without a second thought, he sprinted towards it, managing to slip inside just before the doors closed. He quickly spotted Shika sitting alone and took the empty seat in front of her. As the bus pulled away, Kazuma felt a wave of emotions rise within him, but he couldn't find any words to say. Before he could speak, Shika broke the silence, saying she knew he had overheard the conversation about Yuri. Kazuma nodded, admitting he also had Yuri's phone. Shika, startled, asked how he got it, and Kazuma explained that Sumire had taken it from Shika's desk. Hearing this, Shika seemed overwhelmed, finally telling Kazuma that he should leave her and go back to his mother. But Kazuma flatly refused, insisting that he needed to understand why she came back to them after everything that had happened. Shika's expression turned sad, and she began to cry, confessing that she just wanted to apologize. Shika admitted she never intended to be part of their family while hiding the truth, and that she felt like she didn't want to live anymore. Kazuma deeply felt her pain and wanted to comfort her, but before he could say anything, Shika suddenly stood up and ran off the bus. Kazuma reached out to stop her, but she was gone, leaving him with one final plea. Despite what Shika said, Kazuma couldn't abandon her, and quickly chased after her as she ran. Shika got on a subway train, and Kazuma, still determined, managed to get on as well. Sitting down next to her, though, still not knowing what to say, Shika began to open up about her past. She admitted that when Yuri was being abused by Shika's father, she felt helpless. Unsure if she had deliberately avoided helping Yuri or was simply too scared to act. Yuri had tried to help her, but Shika just watched silently as Yuri fell into the same pain she had endured. Kazuma listened, feeling Shika's words pierce his heart, as painful as 1,000 needles. He comforted her, reminding her that she was just a child back then, and it wasn't her fault for not speaking up. Shika suddenly collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably, overwhelmed with guilt. She regretted not helping Yuri on that fateful day, believing that if she had just called for help, everything might have been different. Kazuma watched her quietly, drawn into Shika's sorrow. When the train finally stopped at a station, Shika stood up without a word and got off, leaving Kazuma in silence. As they walked through the countryside, Kazuma followed Shika from behind. Gradually, he recognized the path she was taking, and soon, a familiar house came into view. This was the place where everything changed, the house where the events that shaped their lives unfolded. Shika fell to her knees before the house, overwhelmed with pain, and screamed in regret, wishing she had never saved Kazuma from death after he tried to end his life upon leaving prison. Shika blamed herself, believing her disappearance would make everyone, Sumire, Shusuke, and the others, happier, free from the burden of the painful truths they now faced. Kazuma, still silent, contemplated Shika's words. He then told her that if it weren't for her, he wouldn't be here today either. Regardless of the past, he could never abandon her. Because they were family. He moved closer, gently took her hand, and pulled her into a comforting embrace, vowing that he would never let anything hurt her. Shika continued to cry, saying it was too late. Now that Kazuma's mother knew everything, she felt she could never go back to her old life. She confessed that she had always longed to run away, to go somewhere far away with Kazuma, to live peacefully, hidden from the world, and free from the pain she feared she would bring to others. Kazuma thought for a moment, then agreed. If that was what Shika wanted, he was ready to go with her, hand in hand. Kazuma and Shika began to walk away together, heading towards a new beginning.